All right, everybody. It is another chapter of Celtics Warriors. And to help us break it down, we got to head to outer space. We brought in our guy, Sam Esfandiari from Light Years Podcast is here. This is Green with Envy. Let's lock in. What up, what up, what up? Welcome into another game preview edition of the Green with Envy podcast. As always, this is your boy Will Weir checking in. How you doing? How you living? Joining me today, we got my co-host, my best friend, and the coach of our podcast, the one and only Greg Manakis. How you doing today, homie?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. Excited about our guest here, Sam Esfandiari in the house from the Light Years podcast. Sam, how you doing, brother?
Yeah, pretty good. Kind of looking forward to Sunday. I always enjoy a good Warriors Celtics game.
So that leads me into my first question that I want to ask you today. So leading into this game, I went back to 2016, which is the year Jaylen Brown was drafted. So the Celtics kind of their nucleus, now that Marcus Smart's gone, starts with Jaylen Brown and kind of him being drafted. And of course, the Warriors' main nucleus, we all know about, has been together for many years. But I want to ask you this. Since 2016, including, we don't have to touch on it too much, that finals, 4-2 Warriors, we know, yada, yada, yada. We can skip right over that. It's 11-10 Celtics versus Warriors. So basically a 500 even split since 2016 as far as records go. Is this a rivalry game? That's where I want to start with this, Sam, because like you said, you get excited for this. So do we. I want to make sure that we're all on the same page here.
I view it as like a friendly rivalry. Like I don't have... I have bad blood towards the Lakers. I'll put it that way. I know you guys have.
You're on the right show for that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. The Celtics, I just think there's a lot of kind of like mutual admiration between the organizations. Like they play similar styles of basketball dating back to Brad Stevens. Brad Stevens and Steve Kerr have a lot of love for each other. It gets lost, but Joe Lacob was a minority owner of the Celtics when right before he bought the Warriors. Danny Ainge was actually the person who recommended Bob Myers to him. There's a lot of like front office crossover between the teams. I think in general, they try to do business the same way, which is why I always think it's fun to watch them because while they have completely different rosters, you can tell that they value the same things basketball wise, culturally, and those sort of things. So kind of a rivalry. If nothing else, it's fun because Boston's generally always good. The Warriors, at least, are always competitive. And, we only see you twice a year, right? Like I see Sacramento enough, but we only get to see you guys a couple times a year. It's national TV. It's usually a big game. So yeah, we call it rival.
Right. Familiarity breeds contempt, and we're not like overly familiar with each other despite that NBA Finals matchup. And then you also have Draymond Green, who just showers Jason Tatum with love anytime he gets the opportunity, calling him like the next big thing for Team USA. And then, talking about the goalpost being moved just for JT and not for other people. So where are you as a Warriors fan and analyst? Where are you at with Draymond Green right now?
I mean, I'll defend whatever he does to the last day. The season turned around when he came back and decided to lock in and stop just like getting involved with ridiculousness with getting himself thrown out of games, choking out Rudy Gobert, and doing just generally.
That was absolutely bananas. Like if someone on the Celtics had done that, I don't even know how I would have reacted to it. It was insane, dude.
It's funny because it's like, I think, like, for example, you're asking if it's a rivalry. I think Warrior fans like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown more than they like Rudy Gobert. When he did that to Rudy Gobert, we're all like, yeah, but it's kind of funny, right? Like,
but it's Rudy Gobert.
It's like, I shouldn't have done that, but I get it. That guy's really annoying, that sort of thing. And then also, like, I mean, look, Draymond's been a Warrior for 12 years now. 12. Yeah. Sorry. And I mean, he's so integral to everything they do. Like it's hard to divorce those feelings from also just like the anger of like him basically tanking half the season cost. So I'm sure you guys had kind of a similar relationship with Marcus Smart at times, but Marcus Smart didn't deliver 4 titles for you. So like when you tie all of that into it, like there's always going to be a certain level of we let a little more slide with that guy than we would with someone else.
Yeah, it's the homegrown connection to a guy
Yeah.
where you're like, you don't know him like we do. All right.
Sure.
We've, like, we have a deeper understanding. You're only seeing this because you tuned in and you happen to see him choke Rudy Gobert. That's not the Draymond I know. Right.
Exactly,
It's almost a toxic relationship. It's kind of what we're describing, where there's some highs and lows and you got to make the defense, but you'll all look back on it one day. And for you guys, you're at least going to have those championships to fall back on. And, you mentioned kind of this season for the Warriors has been fascinating. Coming into the season was kind of a mixed bag of what people thought. I know Greg was still saying I'm not writing them off until it's too late. Beginning of the season, Greg was like, I think I'm kind of done with the Warriors. I don't see it. Then you kind of get to, you mentioned what is probably the true line of demarcation is the whole, Draymond shenanigans and whatnot. Sure. But another guy that I want to talk about, and there's two specific guys that Greg and I want to talk to you about before we start getting into the Celtics Warriors specific matchup. And I want to start with Jonathan Kuminga because right around that same time with all the Draymond stuff, this has been, now you've kind of had to propel this 2-timeline team that the Warriors have been trying to do for so many years, has been forced to take the spotlight. And for Jonathan Kuminga, I'm going to reference this as a line of demarcation for our fans, because I'm thinking back to that December matchup with the Warriors, which all came back and won. And that was still like, all right, well, they still got something in it because they came back and were able to secure an overtime victory. But Jonathan Kuminga, before that game, 25 games, 4 starts, 12 points, 3.6 rebounds, 48, 32, 66 shooting splits. Still, what are we getting here? What is this guy? Post Boston, which I'm just using for our fan base here, 31 games, 26 starts, 18.2 points, 5.7 rebounds, 3 assists, now shooting 56% from the field. Talk to me a little bit about what has been so different for specifically Jonathan Kuminga here these last 30 games or so.
It's funny because I remember that game, and the reason it sticks out in my mind is Kuminga made the key winning play defensively on Jason Tatum in that game. He's always had kind of the physical profile of a guy who should be a great defender, but like most young guys, it waxes and wanes. Sometimes he looks completely lost. Sometimes you're like, wow, he's going to make an all defensive team at some point. What's funny is, the player I kind of always use as a comparison for him is Jaylen Brown. And I think they have different games. He's more of a 3-4. Jalen's more of a 2-3. I mean, he's just 2 to 3 inches taller than Jalen, but they're both like so physical and athletic, and just the pressure they put on the rim as a wing. And at the same time, they both kind of like, the handle's not quite as refined as, a Jason Tatum. The jump shot's not quite as refined as like Tatum. Like the skill level's not quite as high as like the true top tier wings, but they're just such a physical force in terms of the way they impact the game. And I know Jalen's come a long way since the early years, but I remember him early on in Boston when it was a little less clear what type of player he'd be. Like, you knew you had talent, but you weren't really sure where it was going. For Kuminga, I think it's been finally being given the space to make mistakes, like not being yanked the first misrotation, being able to play through it so he can breathe, because that's been kind of a big point of contention with the 2-timeline thing. It's like, how are you going to develop guys if you're trying to compete? Mm-hmm. You have to let them play through it. And I feel like you guys might have a little sympathy towards this because those years with Hayward and Kyrie and Horford, and it's like, well, they want to develop Jaylen Brown, but also they got veterans with, clout and established names ahead of them. And it kind of turns it's just hard to do 2 things at once is the reality of the matter. Right. And then the second part of it with Kuminga is figuring out that there's more to the game than scoring. He's always been able to beat his man one-on-one and get to the rim, right? Like, that much is obvious. What Steve Kerr was always trying to get him to understand is like, you're 6'8", 7-foot wingspan. You might be the best athlete in the league. Why are you not rebounding the ball? Why are you not getting 2 blocks, 2 steals? Why are you not like being a disruptive force in all these different ways? And I feel like the Celtics game, there's also a Nuggets game in there around that same time. That's when we started seeing him impact the game in different ways. So I can remember a key defensive stand on Jason Tatum that Kuminga made towards the end of that game. And those were exactly the type of things that the coaching staff wanted to see, and that I think Warrior fans wanted to see from him to really buy in. It's like, I know you can get 15 to 20 points because no one can stay in front of you, but can you actually play in crunch time, against the best team in the league and that sort of thing. Yeah. And so I think that's been the biggest thing. I think the sky's the limit in terms of his potential. I really do think he could be an all-star one day. His trajectory still just so much reminds me of kind of Jaylen Brown, though. In so many different ways, which I'm saying as a compliment, because that's a damn good player.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things we always talk about with Jaylen, not so much anymore, but I mean, even now that he continually just finds a way to improve another part of his game each year when we're like, all right, he's hit his ceiling. And it's like, oh, now he's doing this. Oh, didn't see that coming. And with Kuminga, we're recording this on a Friday morning. So I know you guys will be playing the Raptors tonight, so we don't know if anything will happen in that game. But, watching the Knicks and Warriors game from last night, there was a couple Kuminga plays that stood out, but one of them that, like you said, just doing other things besides scoring the basketball was he made a Kevin Love-esque outlet pass to Steph Curry, basically diagonally across the court to Steph, who just then turned around and does what Steph Curry does and hits a 3 in transition from the left wing, because why not? He's Steph Curry. But that type of play was something that in the times that I've checked in with Kuminga, that was never part of it. It would have been head down, dribble, let me try to go coast to coast, or
probably slow down the break. Yeah.
Exactly. Him having the awareness and that's really Warriors basketball. Like watching that, I was like, oh, this is what I've known Warriors basketball to feel like. And Kuminga's now bought in with his own, added sauce that he brings to it in different ways.
For sure. And that Knicks game you're referencing, he had a block in the half court where he came from the weak side to get Brunson from behind. That's something he wouldn't have done a couple months ago. That's a play that like Kawhi Leonard or, like KD or LeBron makes, like high, like wings who just, are all world. Those are the type of plays you want to, because there's no reason he shouldn't be able to make those plays again. He's 6'8". He can get his head well above the rim when he jumps. Like the thing you'll notice with him is it's not just that, he's got like a 40+ inch vert. It's like how fast he gets the second jump off the floor. He's just like top. He's a level of athlete the Warriors have never had. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, it's interesting you said that. When I wanted to ask you, you mentioned Jaylen Brown. You just mentioned Kawhi Leonard. So does Kuminga, like the type of role that he's playing for the Warriors right now, does he remind you of anybody from the past? The one name that jumps out to me would be Andre Iguodala, just in terms of like athleticism. But is he completely singular to this iteration of what the Warriors are and like being built around Steph Curry? Has there ever been anybody like him on the Warriors?
No, I mean, I think you're nailing it. He's a different type of player. Andre's basically a point guard in a wing's body, like just the smartest player ever going to see. He also was not the athlete that Kuminga was during his Warriors tenure. He was that athlete in Philly, like when he was 21, 22. KD, just a different animal. Like I wouldn't compare him to KD. I wouldn't compare really anyone to KD. I would say he reminds me of what they wanted Harrison Barnes to be, but Harrison Barnes still never really got there. He wasn't as good at putting pressure on the rim. And I think that's really the uniqueness of Kuminga. Yeah, he's got like the defensive tools to be like a lot of wings they've had over the years, right? Like Harrison Barnes included, Andrew Wiggins included, Andre Iguodala, all those guys. Offensively, he just can get to the hole against anyone one-on-one. And I don't really think the Warriors have ever had a guy not only have that mentality, but have the like quick twitch athleticism and burst to do it also.
And is it just off the first step? Like what's his go-to to get to the rack?
It really is just pure quickness and strength off the first step. He doesn't have a like refined handle or anything. That's where I'm kind of like, that's why I think of Jaylen Brown when I think of, because like obviously everyone knows Jaylen Brown, no left hand, that sort of thing, And I think it's a little overblown.
Yeah, we've heard that before.
and I do think it's like overblown regarding his handle a little bit, but like no one's going to confuse his ball handling with someone like Tatum or Devin Booker, like these wings with just a much more refined handle. And that's kind of how I view Kuminga too. Like, no, he's not going to be in like a mixtape for moves off the dribble, but it's just effective athleticism and raw strength to just get his shoulder into someone and blow by them. And then like give him credit. He has enough touch to finish everything, which he does. I mean, he's 55% from the field this season. I think he's something like 75% when he gets below 8 feet. So basically when he's like attacking the rim, he's really effective at it. It's, easier said than done to stop someone when that big and athletic going downhill.
To round out this conversation here about the two timelines, give us the scouting report on Pajemski. This is a guy that I think is pretty fascinating. I know is a fan favorite of Greg, so I want to hear your own scouting report on him.
I love that.
I love him too. He is. He has the best assist to turnover ratio on the team outside of Chris Paul, which is absurd for a 20-year-old rookie on the Warriors to do. Like, part of the reason it's hard to integrate young guys is they play such a complex, like intuitive style of basketball. Most young guys aren't used to
never mind rookies. We've seen veterans. We've seen Kelly Oubre fail at it. We've seen established veterans fail at this.
Exactly. And he just picks it up off the tee. I don't know. When I watch him, sometimes I'm like, he reminds me of like a Caruso or a Derek White, the way he can just like connect everything, and he's pretty scrappy defensively. He's got a ways to go on that end, but most of his work on defense is like, you probably just need to hit the weight room a little bit, buddy. It's not like instinctual, like he knows what to do defensively. You just see him running into like 20-year-old guarding 27-year-old, lack of strength type of stuff. And then just like the passing, always making the right play. And then other times I watch him running in transition. I'm like, did the Warriors just get Steve Nash 2.0? Hey, they both went to Santa Clara, maybe. So I don't know. He's got elements of all these different players. Steve Kerr calls him a connector. I think he's got a little more upside than that in terms of he's shooting something like 38 to 40% from three. He's got some good touch when he's finishing. He's still figuring it out. He's not going to be a big time scorer for this team this year. He's had a couple games where he's popped with like 20 to 30 points, but it's been a lot of like 8 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, 10 points, 6 rebounds, 4, that type of stuff. But yeah, watching a rookie kind of plug into like the quintessential like veteran role has been pretty amazing, and it just makes me excited to see where he goes coming in.
Yeah, he's super fun to watch, man. All right, we're running short on time, so I do want to give you a choice of one more guy to talk about on the Warriors roster. I'm gonna give you 4 guys to choose from. Okay, you can talk about Moody, you can talk about Clay, CP3, or you can talk about Trace Jackson Davis. Who do you want to talk about right now? Who do you feel like you should bring up for Celtics fans? Or who do you just want to talk about?
Who do you think will impact the game the most on Sunday?
Well, I don't expect Wiggins to play on Sunday, which means Moses Moody's going to be in the starting lineup. I think with Clay, you know what you're getting. Like, you guys have seen Klay Thompson. Yeah, he had his struggles this year, but he's kind of coming around. He is a little slower than he used to be. Shocker. That happens when you age and you've been as injured as he is, right? But he still looks like Klay Thompson when you watch him. The shot's still the shot. He still competes his ass off, does all the normal Klay things, and he's kind of took into coming off the bench. Like, he's really embraced it. So I don't think any of that's new to you. I think Moses Moody is the most interesting guy because they've had a little bit of a numbers crunch on the wings. Just too many guys who play the same positions, and he just tends to always be the odd man out. With Wiggins out of lineup, he's been given space. I thought he had his best defensive game of the season against Jalen Brunson. And I'm so curious to see him guard a team with 2 legitimate all-star wings. I imagine Kuminga will be tasked with guarding Tatum majority of the time. At least that's going to be the Warriors' first option. But Jaylen Brown's no slouch. I want to see how Moses Moody looks going up against a player that I think he's probably an inch shorter than. He's got the wingspan. He should be able to hang physically with him. But, like, again, it's matching him up against an all-star wing. It's a little different than going against guards in New York, So yeah. Curious. He's also like, he's scrappy. He can shoot the ball. I don't really know where his ceiling is, but he's interesting, if nothing else.
Yeah, another element looking at this game specifically here on Sunday, in the first matchup of these teams, there was no Kristaps Porzingis. So
Right.
I'm very curious, how do you expect the Warriors to defend the Celtics with Kristaps on the court? Because when we think about the recent history of these two teams, and Jaylen Brown talked about it on the TNT set with Draymond, where he's like, man, you guys just kind of like, you guys were tougher than us. We're gonna be ready for it this time. And Kristaps, for all of the Celtics have had the same problem, same issues. Kristaps has been the cheat code so far this season.
Yeah.
So I'm very curious, what do you think that counter is going to look like for the Warriors with Kristaps involved? Barring whatever happens tonight against the Mavericks, but him expected to play. What do you imagine that looking like?
It's interesting because I would say Draymond will guard him, but if Kristaps is hanging out on the perimeter, the Warriors traditionally don't like to put Draymond on 3-point shooters because it takes him away from his best skill, which is help defense. Can't help if you're guarding a guy 25 feet away.
Yeah. And Kristaps stands about 5 feet beyond the 3-point line
exactly.
when he spreads it out.
Maybe Draymond on Drew.
Yeah, maybe. That honestly,
Drew plays in the dunker spot a lot.
Yeah, that's exactly the type of thing. The Warriors love to cross match Draymond on, I don't want to say the worst offensive threat, but like someone he can help off of, because so much of what Draymond does defensively is like intuitively freelancing. And, you can't freelance off a guy that like you can't leave open because he's going to nail a shot. Right. So that's a possibility. But then the question is, who guards Kristaps?
Right. Because now if we just talked about Moody and Kuminga might be on the Jays, now we're down to, if we're looking at the starting five, we're looking at Pods and Curry. Like, I mean, that's where KP just goes to work in the post, and then Holiday spreads out to the corner where he's hitting 60%.
If you think about the last game as well, Jaylen Brown really bullied Steph Curry, right? He wanted to make a point of that. He took him into the post the whole game. So
he got a switch, took advantage of the switch. Yeah. I wonder if the Warriors maybe go away from Steph and Pods together. They love it for offensive reasons. I mean, just watch Pods have his head up and find Steph at all times. You can see why they like him out there. But it might be a game where they go a little more Clay.
I was going to say, this feels like a Clay matchup on Porzingis potentially.
Or to your point, it might even be a little Trace Jackson Davis in there. He's 6'9", but he's athletic. You could easily stick him on Porzingis. Porzingis has a height mismatch if he gets him in the post, but that's going to be true of every Warrior guarding him. So, curious to see. I do agree with you. I think they're going to start Pods, but this might be a game where his minutes are limited and they go with, Clay way more than normal. So
what's up with Looney these days? I know he's coming off the bench, still playing like 15, 20 minutes a game. Because like he kind of killed the Celtics in the finals. Is it just like physical deterioration that's not allowing him to play?
He looks worn down. I mean, he's been playing terrible. He's actually been a little better since they moved him off the bench. But like Steve Kerr rode him in the starting lineup for an extended period of time when it was clear he didn't have the juice. I don't know if he's just worn down from not missing a game for multiple years and deep playoff runs. And he has the surgically repaired hips. So he's kind of always going to be a guy that you're kind of trying to maintain his health. Or if this is just the new reality of who he is. But like, the honest answer is he just looks too slow for most of the year. And so they moved him to the bench, and it's possible, maybe playing a little less, getting a little more rest, he'll be able to rediscover a little quickness. It's not as if he's like, a quick twitch guy, but when you're kind of slower as it is, you don't have a step to lose. So
quickly, speaking of new realities, what's it like watching Clay at this point of his career where he's now coming off the bench, and you hear some of the comments that he makes where he's kind of coming to grips with his own limitations. And as you mentioned, he's older, which, he's been injured. Like, all these things make sense. But as a fan who has watched him, once again, we're coming back full circle to watching a guy from the beginning, winning 4 championships, seeing what he's done, what he's been, to where he's at now. What is that like, watching Clay transition in real time to this part of his career?
Honestly, since he's moved to the bench, it's been amazing because I just feel like he's let it go and he's freer. The thing with Clay is he's an open book. He'll be like vulnerable and say things publicly that other players wouldn't say. Right. I'm sure you saw some of the quotes where he's talking about struggling with it. And it was really tough watching him struggle in the early part of the season. You could just see a guy was trying to chase ghosts. He was trying to Clay's I don't think he gets enough credit for just kind of like how much of a dog he is. Like he's not like the best player of the last era or anything, but he exudes a lot of those like Mamba mentality cliches. Like the dude's a high level winner and incredibly competitive. I mean, he tore his ACL in an NBA Finals game where he was clearly the best player on the floor, walked out there and hit the free throws. It's funny for me to say it. That's the coolest moment I've ever seen in person.
Yeah, that was badass. I remember watching that live. That was super badass.
I've watched the Warriors win titles, and I thought the coolest moment I ever saw was him walk out there on one knee and hit free throws in a game that lost him the finals. And then he tears his Achilles after it. He doesn't play for 30 months. Like, takes a lot of mental fortitude to come back from that sort of thing. And so watching him like struggle with the fact that he couldn't basically hard work his way back to being the player he wanted to be was tough to watch. But then watching him kind of let it go and kind of embrace that, like, he likes to say, like, it, you know, like it's like Miami Heat Ray Allen phase of his career is where he is, which is like kind of realistic. He's older. He can help you for 20-ish minutes a game. Playing him 35 minutes a game at this stage, it's not going to look so pretty, you know? But seeing him embrace it's been enjoyable.
We haven't done this in a while, Will, but we only have a couple minutes left here. I just want to ask Sam, if you could pick one thing that you're currently jealous, you have envy, green envy about the Boston Celtics. When you look at it, look at what we got going on in Boston, what are you envious of right now?
Good players.
Says the guy with Steph Curry.
Sorry. Good players in their prime. How's that? No.
Okay, sure. There we go. That's better.
I feel like the Warriors, I mean, Steph's older. He's still Steph. But like, as much as I love Kuminga, he's 21. Jaylen Brown is what, 27? 28?
27. Yeah. Tatum turns 26 on Sunday, win this game.
Right. That sort of thing. I think the easy answer would be like those, like having wings in their prime, you know, guys who are like ready to help right now as opposed to like development projects. But my honest answer will probably be Kristaps Porzingis, just because he addresses the Warriors' most glaring and obvious hole that everyone talks about, which is a big man, you know?
Yep.
And he would fit perfectly next to Draymond with his shooting ability.
And he was edible this summer, man.
And instead the Warriors decided to go get the other wizard, Chris Paul. So it's I mean, I remember thinking about it in real time. I'm like, you know, Porzingis, that might be a great move for the Warriors if they're trying to get rid of Jordan Poole, which like everyone knew they were going to do because of anyway. And you know, so I'd say Porzingis, while he's not my favorite player on the Celtics, that would you know, be Tatum or Brown or something like that. I'm envious because he's kind of the type of player that I've wanted the Warriors to get for a few years now and just haven't.
All right, final question, Sam, and then we'll get you out of here. What's the ceiling for this Warriors team for this season? What's their ceiling?
Second round of playoffs. I think I don't think it's higher than next year. I think what I've made peace with is if Kuminga keeps developing, let's get to the off season and you might not be that far away from being back in finals contention because Steph is still Steph. Kuminga is kind of this nice piece. And honestly, you need to move on from Andrew Wiggins and find someone more reliable in that role. And then you might be cooking with something. I can't see a scenario in which they can ignite some magical run, particularly with how good the Denver Nuggets are playing in the West. Like I could see them beating a Minnesota or an OKC because they're inexperienced. And Steph does Steph things in the playoffs. I can't see them beating the Nuggets, much less running through 2 months of the playoffs like that. So I think that's their ceiling. And I think at this point, success would just be making the playoffs.
Well, would you have said they would have had a finals ceiling 2 years ago?
Yeah, I would have.
Okay.
I would have. I mean, the difference is I don't know what to make of Andrew Wiggins. And I know what to make of Klay Thompson at this stage. 2 years ago, Andrew Wiggins was playing like an all-star. Jordan Poole was coming into his own, and Klay was a little better than he was now. And you still had Steph and Draymond and a better cast of role players. Right now, I like the young players. I like the depth. I'm looking at this team. I'm going, there's no real second option on this team, you know? It's honestly Jonathan Kuminga.
It's a crapshoot night to night as to who you think is going to be that number 2, and you're hoping, like you said, it's going to be Jonathan Kuminga.
I mean, it is, and it's both awesome and also why, I don't take them serious in the playoffs because he's 21,
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the Warriors season as like, get to the playoffs if you can, make some noise if you can, keep developing the young guys. And then in the off season, it's time to have a conversation because they are probably one player away in general. So maybe they can get it in the off season. Maybe it happens internally. Who knows?
Well, should be a fun game. Either way, Sunday afternoon at the TD Garden. Celtics Warriors, next chapter of this friendly rivalry. Sam, appreciate you joining us here on the show today. That's going to do it for this preview episode here of Green with Envy. I'm Will Weir. We got Greg Manakis here, and we're going to play you out with his band down here in Austin, Texas. They are Black Sheep Optimists. We will catch y'all later. Peace.
Every time I get this high, I lose my mind. It don't take much no more until I hit the floor. Every time I get this high, it's you I find. It don't take much no more until I'm at your door.
You cut me to my core, baby. What can I say? You got me on the floor, you know I came to play. I know I shouldn't, but you seem to take my pain away. And every time I score, Jason Tatum fade away. I close my eyes